Okie dokie. I've just watched a bit of this video I'm going to react to, and I thought it'd be a really good one to react to because I actually checked my hours in Genshin, and it says on the Epic Store here I've got 945 hours currently in the game. When I first played Genshin, which is over a year ago now, it was last January, and I've pretty been consistent logging in most days, doing the dailies, playing the game, building up my account. I'm currently trying to give back now and do build videos and team comps and things like that on my channel. So if you want to see that, please subscribe. But I did use the game through Steam for whatever reason, because I preferred Steam at the time. So there's probably easily a couple of hundred hours that I played on Steam before I started using the Epic Store exclusively just to launch Genshin, and that's where this hours ticked up. So I thought this would be a good time to react to this video. This guy, I've never seen this guy before, but he seems to be touching on some good points. So I thought this would be a nice video to react to, and obviously got Asmon's take as well to go along with it. So I'll be pausing a little bit and talking about it, but we'll see what this goes on. So
Genshin Impact.
he's yet to play it.
Best live service he has ever played.
So, at the current pace of how fast we are releasing videos, I realized one thing. We're going without a script. I mean, making videos without a script is the dream of every YouTuber, right? But lately, it just so happens to be that every time I blink, there is a new topic to talk about.
I used to have a script, and the reason why I stopped scripting my videos and like having them like kind of edited and like doing cuts in my videos, the reason why I do everything one take is not because I'm some sort of great speaker. It's because I don't want to have to edit. That's it. That's the only real reason.
I'm kind of similar, to be honest. I think it's one of these where you can script videos, and I don't really like watching scripted videos. And I think this is actually what I expected him to say here. I don't know. We'll get to the video as itself, but the actually writing the scripts just feels really forced. And I think the viewer can generally sense that unless you've got some really good writing style. So overall, just talk, like even like now, just talking to the viewer like you're in the room with them, I think is far more appealing than reading from a script. It's just how it goes, and I think it's one of these, you've either got it or you haven't, and it's very difficult. It takes a lot of takes. I'm sure Asmon's like the same, or any of these bigger people that can do it. You do thousands of videos that aren't good because you messed up, because you didn't like it, etc. So it takes a long time.
I didn't want to have to edit them. I did not want to have to write a script.
Editing
So
sucks as well, but it's not that bad.
Head. Okay, let's go.
Ah, I literally just finished Genshin.
Yeah.
You can't do this to me.
Yeah, I'm kind of.
You know what? Yeah, they can. Because at this point, Hoyoverse really earned my.
I'm gonna play Star Rail. I've watched quite a bit. I've actually watched Asmon play it. It looks good. It looks good. I don't know how much I'm gonna like it. I will get into it. I will cover it on my channel. I think I'll stream it, to be honest, when I first play it, and give that a go, and then go from there. We'll see how it goes. But definitely, it's not quite what Genshin is, to be honest. So
why don't we talk about the best and I believe the most underappreciated part of Genshin. Now, the last time I talked about this game, I had only 30 hours in the game, and I was making more of a first impression review.
Sure.
Currently, I am sitting at well over 600 hours.
Yeah, as I showed in the video, I got over 1,000 easily. Which I'm surprised Asmon's a bit shocked by it, because it's a very popular. I've played for over a year.
Holy fuck!
It takes a long time.
Playing this like 2 months ago?
It doesn't matter if you started playing only a short time. The time it takes to build your characters in Genshin, it can take, for example, to build a new 4-star if you haven't pre-farmed materials and artifacts, to get that character fully built just by daily login without actually swiping your card for like daily resin and things like that, topping up that sort of thing. It's going to take you about 3 or 4 months to crack out, to sort of max out one character over time, just due to the nature of the game is built on a resin system that ticks over time, and that resin is used to obtain artifacts or other things like more gems in the game to level your characters, level your weapons, and it's more of a time gated game than anything else, and I think that's good. I think they've done that well.
I have about 100 hours streamed, and I definitely played at least 5
Yeah,
times
I've probably
that
got
amount
more.
off
I've
stream.
got more than
But
that streamed. It
unfortunately,
hasn't
there
done
is
that
no
well.
official way to track the numbers. And that is all in just the
That's
last
probably a good thing.
That's why I stopped
6 to 8
streaming it,
months
because
or
I was just
so.
streaming a lot
And
of it and
yeah,
it
in
wasn't
case you
doing
don't know, I
well.
somehow kinda created 2 audiences for me. There is my League audience on YouTube, but on Twitch I actually have a totally separate segment, which is my Genshin audience. And now I'm just trying to bleed the 2 sides into each other.
League
so
isn't a very good game to stream unless you're a super competitive player. Or you're like very entertaining or something like that. Like it's very hard to stream League and be entertaining.
Fun fact, I've never played it before, and I downloaded it for the first time on the Epic Store, and it turns out it's you need the Riot client on it, and I immediately just backed out. I was like, nah.
here we are. If we want to talk about why Genshin is a great live service game, let's first talk about what Genshin does well. Genshin is a very simple and easy game. The point of everything is really to just consume the story.
Okay.
You can look for challenges and you can try hard, but if you try hard, you just speed up the gameplay. That's kind of the reward. But I would argue that in general, Genshin is actually the pinnacle of casual gaming. You can log in.
Oh, I would agree with that. I think anybody would. Yeah, Genshin Impact, this is the casual Landy game. Absolutely.
Do your daily quests, spend your resources, and just log out in like 15 minutes and be happy. And if you don't do your dailies and you just don't want to play, then who cares?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
This is such a nice change of mindset from all the other live services. So already, somehow, Genshin is a step ahead with the fact that it is a great casual game. But the story is also really good. Now, I have to mention that while some of the latest stories that came out are some of the best narrative I have ever seen in any game, the early content definitely had some rough edges.
I wonder if that's actually true, because that's what people told me about A Realm Reborn in Final Fantasy. And maybe this is a super unpopular opinion, but I actually kind of liked The Realm Reborn more than Heavensward. I felt like Heavensward was Lord of the Rings, and A Realm Reborn was Game of Thrones.
Genshin's early story, I don't think the Archon quest, which is the main story, but there's lots of side stories to go along with the Archon quest. And it's the typical game where you've got to go and finish certain quests before you can start another. And some quests can be sort of derailed by other quests because you've started, say, one quest with a certain character. The game will not let you progress when you start another quest so far, because it will literally say one or more of the characters is currently busy in this quest. You must go and finish this first, and that can throw the story off quite a lot, because 1 minute you're in like Inazuma doing something for say Yae Miko, and then the next minute Yae Miko's in Sumeru, for example. There's just like the same characters in almost 2 places at once, and the story does not relate because it's 2 different parts of the story. That bit aside, the early game and what Genshin very much excels at, in my opinion, and I'm not the biggest fan of this, but I don't know if this is talented or if this is what it is, but Genshin has a fantastic way of drawing out a lot of conversations, particularly like say in the Zhongli quest or the Archon quest, for example. There was so much dialogue in it, but it wasn't necessary dialogue, and they will draw lots of these sort of unnecessary conversations out just to make a really small point. And even though you could argue it's character building, sometimes it does just feel like you're just basically filling in time for both the voice actor and the game itself. That was my only real annoyance, and that was because I've like grown up with Zelda, and Zelda's got like a really beautiful way of articulating the dialogue between the characters, and where they'll get a lot of information across in a very simple and sort of assertive way, whereas Genshin kind of brings out this telling you what you had for lunch, dinner, and breakfast the last week before they'll tell you about the main part of the quest, sort of thing. You know, it gets a little bit too much, almost filler content. That's sort of only niggle, and if you were to talk about the early game, that is probably about the only problem with the early game, is there's a lot of sort of character building, but I assume that's just intentional, obviously, to do what I just said, to build characters like Zhongli and others. And overall, looking back, it's good, but when when there's a lot of time you're spending a lot of time in this story, sometimes these cutscenes can go on for like 20 to 30 minutes, and so that's where it starts getting a little bit dreary, in my opinion.
Without spoiling anything for all the people who have never played Genshin, it's not that the story in the early patches would be bad, it's just that the pacing was awful.
Yeah.
There were times where you were doing taxes for 6 hours before
That's what people told me about Final Fantasy, and that part was true. Absolutely.
you got to the strong point in the story. Now the strong point was really good, but god damn, sometimes the story can drag a lot.
Yes.
But thankfully they learned from their past mistakes, and these days the stories are simply really good.
Yeah.
And there is a good
Yeah,
reason
the-
why
yeah,
I
content's
always
currently
focus
better,
on good
for
story
sure.
First. Of course, in any video game, gameplay is king, and I can easily say that Genshin's combat is one of the best combat systems I have ever played.
Well,
So
that's impressive. Holy shit. Yeah, I think that's one of the big things, is making sure the combat is actually good and fun to play. Like, I don't know why. So this is especially true, man. It's so especially true with Western developers. The game looks amazing. The voice acting is really good. The cinematics are great. The menus look really nice. But the game plays like fucking garbage.
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
What the fuck are you doing?
There's a lot.
How is it that everything is good? Everything is good except the gameplay.
EA titles are typically like that. Or a lot of single player titles are typically like that. I can look over my pile of Xbox games and probably pick out a few. I don't want to start any hate, but there's definitely a good list there. I mean, instantly looking at Anthem is a great example, I think, where like Anthem, one of the best looking games I've ever seen, and you sit there and think, why did this fail? And then the gameplay is just really mediocre, but the menus, the systems, the guns, the start, everything just looks great. It's a weird take.
Suddenly, you have a world that feels alive. Over the years, you can see how it is developing, and suddenly, with a good story behind the characters, you also start connecting with the characters. And keeping you engaged in this kind of stuff is really good for gacha games.
There are some good moments. They haven't done a lot of the actual hangout events that they give you. They give you chances to hang out with certain characters by doing daily commissions. You unlock these keys that can unlock further story quests that don't really relate to the main quest, but give you sort of an additional content with said character. They can be pretty good as it goes with the actual giving you extra time with that actual, say, voice actor, and to build up some relationship with that character.
The more you like certain characters, the more likely you are to pull for them. So, to keep everyone hooked on the ever-developing...
They give you a chance to play most of them or see most of them, usually with trials or different events. They usually give you a chance, so it's not like you don't know what that character's already like. The problem is people do pull for, they're like, he initially said, and that just reminds me what I wanted to say before, he initially said about like sort of the relationships here with certain characters. I would say the only one that's really stood out to me that was very strong in the story, and it's probably because I used Aether as my lead character, my lead MC, is Ayaka. Has definitely felt like probably one of the strongest lore-written characters in with sort of the traveler as the adventurer. Raiden was very well written as well. Raiden Shogun and Zhongli, but not so many, and Venti, I suppose. But not all the characters are written into a strong lore with the MC. There's only a few, and I say the first one that made me think of that is definitely Ayaka.
Developing world. Genshin gets a story update every month. Every month there is a major patch that adds in...
That is nuts to keep up with that much content for that long. Oh my god. Once a month.
New story quests for major...
It can be every 3 weeks, actually.
6 weeks.
Every 3 weeks, I think, and then there's an update. I think every 3 weeks there can be updates, but I think generally there's a big update every 6 weeks or something around there. It's around...
But also, roughly every 3 to 4 months, there is also a new sub-region, which usually gives you a new chunk of land to explore, but it also gives you new mechanics that help you explore that area.
See, I need to get in and play this game eventually because, like, this is one of the things with Final Fantasy is that one of the best things about playing new games is I can farm content about the new games. And it's like whenever Final Fantasy releases new content, I can't really farm it because I haven't finished the old content.
It's kind of strange.
It's going to be very soon, guys.
It's kind of strange because he's played Tower of Fantasy. He's obviously big into WoW. The reason I've kind of got into Asmon's content is because I've been able to understand a general consensus of what's going on due to the complexity of Genshin. I don't know how complex Genshin is, say, to other games. Like, say, he's played like Diablo, maybe even like Path of Exile, these sort of games, or even League of Legends. I don't know the depth they quite go into. But for me, for sure, learning like the details of Genshin about the systems and how it works to say reactions and elemental reactions, because that's the big part of the game is reactions. It's not like Zelda where you're just using a sword. There are physical characters, but it's not really anywhere near the meta in the game. There are a few 5-star top gacha units that are physical based, but they aren't popular and by no means are the meta in the game. The meta is currently like the Archons, people like Raiden Shogun, the Hida, the current Sumeru Archon, are two of the kind of sort of meta characters at the minute. So I'm surprised Asmon's not played it yet. It's weird. He's done a lot of content. He's done a lot of content reacting to it. I think he's aware that his fan base might rip him apart a bit for playing it. But then I just saw him play Honkai Star Rail, which I think was sponsored. So, and he seemed to be having a great time with that. And I know I would like to play it as well. So if he's having a great time with that, particularly with the gacha system and Tower of Fantasy, there's no reason I don't think he will not enjoy Genshin. I'm surprised actually Hoyo haven't reached out to him to try and bring him on board, but it could be because he's obviously with another company or something, so who knows.
Again, I don't want to spoil much, but yes, nearly every region has a new way of exploration. And then, of course, roughly every year, there's a whole new...
I'm not too sure what he meant by that. Each region has a new way of exploration. I don't know what he quite means from that, because it's not like you get a new mount or anything like that. You get the main way of exploring the bigger world is teleports, and then you usually go on foot. Sumeru, I suppose, did introduce... Oh, I suppose, but it's a bit weird. Sumeru introduced these sort of teleport points where you can link between. Inazuma brought in these, like, sort of lightning points. I can't remember what they're called. And if you pick one up, it can, throughout certain areas of Inazuma, you can use that to sort of teleport and jump around. But that's not permanent. That's like within the world, I suppose. It's not like he kind of made it sound like you get a new mount or something. There's no mounts in this game. You can get Sayu or Sayu.
New region, which comes with
and I think Yelan as well. Yelan's got very good movement for exploring. Wander is good for exploring. There are some characters that are better to explore the overworld if that's what you want to do.
Bunch of new stories, new exploration, stuff like that. Now, while as I'm explaining this formula may sound just fine, in reality, this formula for a live service game is so powerful that other games are now trying to copy it. For example, Diablo 4 was confirmed to also have...
She is so hot. But yeah, true.
I don't know about that, but whatever.
Stories. With these kinds of updates, you can really turn your game into a live service with a growing world.
I think it's one of the best parts about Genshin, for sure. Is the regular updates they bring in there's always something to look forward to with the current weeks, and the battle pass is quite quick. And there's also daily logins. So if you daily log in, you get your daily primo gems by doing your dailies and getting the commission for that. But you can also buy something called the Welkin Moon, which I think is the equivalent of like sort of $3, $4 for a month. And if you log in each day, it gives you an extra 90 primo gems, which is an extra incentive to log in and do your dailies. And obviously doing this over time generates you more than average primo gems, to do what I've done on my account, for example, enables you to pull for more weapons, more characters than you otherwise would just playing the game without that. So there's other incentives in there as
Now,
well.
I don't know if Genshin was the first game that really tried to push for this style of quick story updates. Because previous...
Which game really did that? I'm pretty sure other games did this in the past, but it's kind of like whenever you have a game that does something really, really well, and it becomes super popular, everybody just attributes everything to that game. It's kind of like the joke that I made about how every game that has a big tree is copying Elden Ring.
I'd say Zelda.
As far as I know,
me.
in other games, you usually had a bunch of big stories every expansion pack. But the quick short stories weren't really a thing. Needless to say, if you want to prove that it really works, just look at how other games are trying to copy what Genshin does.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I have a long history of covering the lore of League of Legends, which to this day I still believe is one of the most beautiful universes I have ever encountered. But we haven't seen a new story for this universe since October last year.
So I can say the exact same thing about Red Dead Online. I played Red Dead Online before I played Genshin for about a year. Put a similar amount of time into about 1,000 hours in that period, and it had the same flaws. It didn't really get regular updates, and even now it's, you know, it got killed off about a year ago or so. It hasn't really had any updates, and that's the problem. If Red Dead Online received like updates like this, like every 3 weeks, every 6 weeks, it would be so healthy for the game. And that's such a strange thing, I think, from my opinion, for Rockstar, because they've got one of definitely the best games of this last generation, and they've just thrown it in the bin. I guess for Grand Theft Auto makes more money, but whatever.
Wasn't Mage Seeker a story, though?
I don't know about
I feel like Mage Seeker was a story, wasn't it? Is that canon? I think it's canon. It's an old story? Oh, really? Okay, so it's just a retelling? Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's really the main reason why I'm kind of like exploring other games now. But you know, a good story wouldn't really be enough for a live service game to keep people engaged. A story can be as good as it wants to be, but without good gameplay, nobody will be there to experience it. Which is where Hoyoverse really shows their passion. Because on top of rolling out the monthly stories, they also have weekly events. And these can be anything from a tiny story to a combat arena where you get try different characters with different power-ups and under special circumstances. These are essentially special game modes. Again, a great way to tease people into pulling for a character if they like them in combat. But these can also be massive events with games.
Well, I don't know about
right here.
I don't know about teasing people. I don't know if teasing people is the right thing to that. They give you basically free rewards for playing the game, essentially. And like I just did the recent event he showed there. It took about 40 minutes. It's on my channel. And you got to trial like some fantastic units mixed with your units. So it's not like you're just getting given the game's units. I got to try, for example, literally these two, Yelan and Hu Tao, 2 units I haven't got. And it's the opportunity to, if you've got quite an established like account like I have, but you haven't got even them, you could spend a lot of time in that trial mixing up your team comps to find, you know, if you wanted to test these 2 characters with 2 certain characters before you pulled, that's I think what it does well. It lets you try the character basically out, you know, for a few minutes. And in these scenarios, for example, which are really fun, it lets you try them with your characters as well. I don't know about teas. I think that's just a good game at the end of the day, because some people are spending money on this. You can just unlock the characters by playing, as I said, and having things like the Welcome Moon. And it's nice to get rewarded. It takes a lot of time. You know, it's a build-up thing. I'm sure WoW and other games are quite similar, where it's more of a time gate thing than anything. You know, you can whale, but even then, a lot of accounts like myself would probably still be a whale account, just because I've taken my time building artifacts and building my characters and team comps. It's just how it goes. It's a very...
Oh my god.
You can look at it wrong.
These 2 characters, I think her name is Yellen and this one is Hu Tao. I don't know what this one is. These 2 have farmed so many fucking simps. It is insane.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. because
all of the time.
they're two of the meta characters in the game at the minute. But Q Tower's really, really good. Xiao is again one of the meta characters in the game, and Yelan is basically a 5-star version of one of the best support characters in the game. So I don't know about farming simps. I think that's probably the wrong take. If anything, actually, I've seen more cosplays of these two than anything else. So I don't know if I really kind of agree with that.
There's
But
so many fucking simps for these two characters. It is disgusting.
I think a Yaka, you could easily say, oh yeah, a Yaka has a big fan
I can't
base.
believe
Yeah,
that
I bet.
one day I just logged into Genshin and I just played on the same day Guitar Hero, Pac-Man, and really weird.
How do you know them? Bro, I know who Jeffrey Dahmer is.
I
That
don't.
doesn't mean I'm a cannibal.
No, I don't.
Settle down.
I don't know who he is. So there you go.
On Snap. And on the next bigger event, I just played an auto battler inside Genshin.
Oh, that's
They
great.
just casually made TFT and then let it go 2 weeks later.
There it
And
is.
apparently, I missed a lot of these events by not playing in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I should have played the game.
They also made
You're not missing out on valuable content. There has been some initial story-driven content they do. They did one last year that was fantastic, where they gave out official skin, and it was an actual complete side story with a lot of the side characters, and it was all voice acted. It's got a lot of story. It takes about the week to complete. That's really fun, and that event disappears, as you said, after 2 weeks. That's more, I think, content that should actually stay in the game for players that haven't experienced it. And obviously you get special unlocks, whether it be a special weapon, a special skin. Sometimes we're currently starting to see skins more in these sort of events, and so you can either then buy the skin afterwards, but obviously if you play the event you can get the skin for free, which is nice. So they do offer with these events, the big thing is materials. It's like character materials, weapon materials. They offer Mora. Some of these events you can come out with like 1 million Mora, like a couple of hundred weapon materials. For example, they gave out a weapon last year that was like an elemental mastery weapon. It was like an umbrella. It's actually really good, quite valuable weapon, to be honest, in the game. And in doing so, they also gave you in the same event all the materials and all like the rank up materials you needed to rank that weapon basically maxed out. They gave you just by playing the event. So, and not too long with all the more and everything to do that as well. So there is basically incentives. If you play the events, your account's definitely going to be a lot stronger than someone that doesn't. Simple as that, basically.
made prop hunt, racing games.
Oh, they also give out characters as well. They give out new versions of characters for sure. Like we've had free versions of Collie and Dory in the past. I can't think of the last one. Obviously, when you initially play the game, you get Barbara, you get like Zhang Ling, and I think you get Collie as well for free. So
Happy Birds and God knows what. I have honestly
Oh, God.
never seen this level of passion be put into a game. And it's a gacha game.
I'll tell you guys that, like, for Honkai Star Rail, you know what really sold the game to me the most? What was the most fun that I had in the game? The most fun that I had was whenever I pulled the legendary character. All right. The second most fun that I had was whenever I got in the cupboard and it was this weird fucking dialogue of this person having these like fucking fantasies in their mind of hearing voices whenever they're sitting in a cupboard. And the reason why is because it was so fucking stupid. Like, that's why it was good. It was yeah, trash can lore. Yeah. That was so damn good. Yeah, actual schizo moment. Yes. And it was the Garbage King. Yes. It's clever, it's funny, and it's not like forced. It's not like it's not lay epic memers. It's not some sort of like like it's not like fuck. It's not like whenever a corporation does an April Fool's joke. It was just funny. It was lighthearted and funny and free-spirited.
They are supposed to be weird and
It's
shady.
natural, yeah.
Not good. And funnily enough, I've seen that people who have been playing Genshin for a very long time got spoiled by how good their events are. Apparently, when the Auto Battler came out, people were like, yeah, it's fine. Alright, back to farming artifacts. Like, it
Is
seems
that
like
it?
the veteran players got numb to how awesome it is to have these rotating game modes in your main game. Meanwhile, I come from League. Yes, the last
That's
time we
about it. Yeah, well, don't you have that one where you can play like one dude? It's called like ARAM or some shit, and you can just run in and kill people? That's about it, right?
got a game mode that wasn't a recycle of an old one was, I believe, 2 years ago. I know it's a bit unfair to compare League to Hoyoverse. And Riot is also currently struggling with people leaving after COVID took its toll. But you know what? Yeah, we can compare them. It seems like this is what happened to...
Well, they're both games, and people decide to play one game or another game. Like, every game effectively competes with every game because it's a marketplace of attention. Well, of course.
Oh yeah.
I think the reason why people lose interest with League of Legends is that it's effectively the same game. It will always have a fan base, and people will always love it, but there's a scope for that, and people will grow tired of it after 10 years, especially. And the reason why Genshin is trying all these different game modes, by the way, is so they can get people to play the game in different ways, because people are probably tired of playing the game the ways that they've already played it for 3 or 4 years.
So for example, they did a fungus event. They reintroduced it. He actually just briefly mentioned it there, but they also did a fungus event last year. Now, the main thing of the fungus event is that it's one of the main enemies in Sumeru. And the thing that they represent is basically all the elements in the game. You get a pyro fungus, you get a cyro fungus, an electro fungus, an emo fungus, a hydro fungus, and even like a physical fungus. Okay, and so the idea, what they did with that, was to reinstate that a lot of people don't actually understand how to play Genshin. You can see it on streamers. There's a fuck ton of misinformation, and even though you can say, and as he said at the beginning of this video, it's an easy game, it is if you know what you're doing. And I'm sure WoW and some of these other games, even like League, are the same, that if you build your character wrong, which is entirely possible to build pretty much every single character in the game incorrectly, it will work potentially, but not very well. You'll do like weak damage or like no DPS, you don't know the rotations. But what these events reinforced into the community is how reactions work, and to enable reactions is the big part of Genshin. If you apply Hydra or wet status to someone, you want to vaporize that, or you want to freeze that, or you can electrocute that, but it's not as powerful. Ideally, you want to vaporize that. It's one of the most powerful reactions in the game. That removes those buffs, and it enables you to then enable another reaction. So you can apply Hydra again and freeze, and then you can swirl that with, say, the Anemo, which is the wind. But these fungus events basically reinforced these reactions in the community. That's what a lot of these events are sort of tailored to, is to try and use the sort of the game's mechanics in a different way. And I think that's very good, to be honest. It's a great way of trying to sort of get across to the community that, because you can't indirectly, you can play this however you like. That is the beauty of it. But there's definitely a correct and an incorrect way to play the game.
World of Warcraft did this too. Like, I think successful games, one of the things that differentiates successful games is that successful games, you can play them in a lot of different ways.
Yes.
There are exceptions. You've got things like Counter-Strike. But in general, I think that's true.
League for focusing on the competitive play for so long, while kinda ignoring their casual players who still make the majority of their players.
It's like a good example of this. Yeah, they just do ignore casual players because it's a competitive game. It makes sense. But anyway, like, look at PoE, right? Like, think about PoE whenever it came out. You did maps, right? That's maps. You do maps, and then after you do maps, you do more maps. Then, now, what we've got is you've got Delve, you've got fucking bosses, you've got special maps that they've added, you have Delirium maps, which are kind of the same thing, but they're not exactly the same thing. And let's see, the Atlas, yeah, you have the Atlas stuff. Let's see, are there any more versions of playing the game? Oh, you had that, what was the one that we did? Heist? Yeah, I forgot all about Heist. I'd fucking do it. But then you had Heist, you had the new one. Temple's basically a map. And what's the new one from, like, Sanctum? So you had all this new stuff. And these are all different ways that people play the game.
And yes, sometimes you need a little bit of a slap to pick yourself back up. I wish League would have the same live service updates that Genshin has. I genuinely wish for that. Actually, super quickly, there is one more thing that I almost forgot to mention. Even though Genshin has little to no real endgame, they have the Spiral Abyss, which is essentially a roguelike for your max level characters where you just go and kill some bosses.
Wow.
But every 2 weeks, they actually rotate all the enemies on all the endgame floors.
Not all of them, not always. Just reset it.
Roguelike, which you can't find anywhere else in the game. So even if you don't care about any of the minigames and you just wanna fight and you don't even care about the story, they still update that as well. So yeah, I just quickly wanted to mention that even without a real endgame, they are still updating the endgame. On top of that, Honkai Star
Well, it's also that the reality is that the amount of hardcore players that really care about the end game is not that many.
No.
But the thing is that all of those hardcore players are on the internet. And they're all giving their feedback. Like, 10 hardcore players sounds like 100 hardcore players. And 100 casual players sounds like 10 casual players.
And one hardcore streamer sounds like 1 million people, I think. Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. There's a very handful of streamers that control the Genshin viewer base, for sure. And some of them I do not agree with at all, but they have a very large audience.
A lot of people that are really vocal about something that doesn't necessarily mean they're the majority.
Yeah.
Just released, and I'm kinda happy to be there with the initial wave of new players. Because after learning what they can do, I definitely don't want to miss out on what Hoyoverse can do. I missed a lot by not playing Genshin. And I don't want that to happen again. People laugh that I'm currently on my gacha game story arc.
I don't know about that, you know. I don't know about that. No, I think that's a bad take. I think that's a bad take to say that you've missed out on a lot by not playing Genshin. I think that's kind of a bad take. I think it's fine. These games only appeal to certain people anyway. You have to kind of be into sort of this sort of Japanese, the anime culture. At least have a sort of liking for it. I think if you don't like, you know, and even Zelda, people aspire this to be like sort of Zelda, and it's got the adventure of Zelda. And if you were to ask me, I'd actually say I'd probably prefer it, to be honest, and that's a hot take. But if anything, a game like this makes me annoyed that Nintendo doesn't support, say, PC, because if they had a PC app and they had made the new Zelda that's coming out in a few weeks, for example, for PC and for the Switch or whatever, even for multi-consoles, the potential of that game, not to mention the income I imagine it would produce, would be phenomenal. It would truly be a contender for a game like this. But the fact that they don't, and they've limited it to the Switch, I think is good for them. They can obviously control that market a lot better. But I think fundamentally you've let Genshin take the crown, essentially. Big time. And Hoyoverse is obviously gladly to do that. But I don't think, if you've never played it, I don't think you're missing out. The story's not that great. Everyone has their own sort of take, you know. It's like if you play Escape from Tarkov or something, should you play this? No. If you play WoW, should you play this? I wouldn't, probably not, no. You know. If you play Tower of Fantasy, should you play Genshin? Yes. Yes, you fucking should, because Tower of Fantasy was garbage compared to this. You know, it's a weird one. It's a weird one. I don't think it's for everyone. And there are people like me that I didn't. I bought into the bad rep when it first came out, and it was actually someone that I met on the Switch that said about, I think I played Animal Crossing with Bless. They suggested this game to me, and I tried it, and I was gritting my teeth and cringing, probably like Asmongold would in the first couple of hours, because I was like, what's going on here? You meet Amber. And I think I've actually got my reaction on my channel of the first of the game and how I played it. And I didn't really understand it probably till literally about 5 or 6 months playing into the game. Because I was, as he said, I was just playing it as a casual experience anyway. It wasn't until I got a few like sort of 5-star units, sort of like Raiden Shogun, a Yaka, where my account started to really sort of turn around, and I really started to see the sort of the potential of the game and team comps and creating content around it. So, but I don't think that's for everybody. You know, that takes such a long time. Some people want to complete Zelda, say, in a week and move on to the next game. You know, they don't want to be playing a game for the next few months, let alone a year. And to almost be incentivized to do so, because if they don't, they're going to miss out on a character that they might want, and that is big part of the gacha system they've got here. This is why I log in most days to do my dailies. I've got the Welcome Moon, just so I have the opportunity to pull more than otherwise I would, so I can build my account and do more content on it. That's fundamentally what my point of view is on it. So I don't think it's for everybody, and I don't think people are missing out if they don't want to play it. I think that's a bit wrong.
Yeah. See you on the Astral Express, because there is a lot to talk about.
There you go.
Hmm.
Yeah, FOMO aware.
It's an interesting take. He didn't really talk about the monetization or the gacha system side to it too much, which is fine. I assume that was for sort of to avoid the negativity and things surrounding that particular topic. People can spend thousands on one character, for example. There's lots of different sides to it that I would say if you've got gambling tendencies, this is not recommended. Overall, I always wanted to do a video like this, so that's why I thought I'd react to it. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like. I wanted to do more reaction videos, but I'd usually leave this to live stream. What I'm going to probably do is start streaming on my YouTube channel here, so if you're new, please subscribe, and thank you for watching.